Welcome to But For Real, a variety show podcast co-hosted by two therapists who also happen to be loudmouth feminists. I'm Valerie, your resident elder millennial child-free cat lady.
And I'm Emerson, your resident chronically online Gen Z brat. And on the show, we'll serve up a new episode every other week that will take you on a wild ride through the cultural zeitgeist, mental health, and beyond.
You'll definitely laugh and TBH sometimes maybe cry a little because this is a silly and serious show.
Buckle up, my friends, and let's get into today's episode.
Hi, listeners. Welcome.
Welcome back to But For Real.
And may it be tea.
And may it be tea. Like, we just riff on the most stupid shit ever, everyone. But, like, what else do girls do in modern times?
Right. We must lean into the absurdity.
Well, yes, because we're in absurd times.
We are.
As we often preach here.
Yes.
So, okay, we're just like in a funny mood. So our funny intro question, which listeners, I would love for you to ponder this also. And of course, today's episode is all about couples therapy to come, but the question at hand is, if you had a celebrity couples therapist, who would it be and why? And I mean, like, they are like total celeb. And
total
just
celeb.
Like,
we're not talking like just Esther Perel, who's kind of a celebrity
and
therapist.
like she is,
right.
for sure, but like celeb, like someone random the house down boots that you think could be your couples therapist and would be good.
Good is a relative term,
Well, sure.
but my choice is Drew Barrymore.
Okay.
I mean, yeah, okay, it's probably a bad choice in the sense of I'm too fangirl for her,
sure.
but I just would love the chaotic energy that she would bring, and I would feel very not judged.
Yeah.
And she's just got such a loving vibe.
That's a great answer. Yeah. Mine is two, because I have to have like a real person, and then mine's a character.
Sure.
So my character person is Zooey Deschanel, specifically as Jess in New Girl, because we're the same person. And honestly, like, I would just love for us to like gab in a clinical environment. You know, like she would kind of have us doing like weird
shit
stuff, like we'd be running around LA. You know, like it would be like for the vibes. And then my maybe more air quotes practical that just came to me would be Terry Irwin.
I don't know Terry Irwin.
Steve Irwin, the Irwins.
Oh,
Terry.
Wow.
You're kidding. Just a beautiful soul.
Yeah.
I feel like she's probably deep. Raised her children up.
Yeah.
Like wonderfully. So I'm like, she knows what the fuck going on.
Ooh, I
Terry?
love that. I love
what
that.
What a great love, too.
Yes.
So I'm like, oh.
She knows her shit.
She knows her shit. She knows those crocodiles and whatever the fuck they do up there.
I love it.
I say up there. I've been there, but I have been to Australia Zoo. I was privileged enough, but it was,
Yeah, cool.
when I was all there.
Now it's time for our first segment, Tea and Crumpets, where we tell you what we can't stop talking about this week.
Mine's Zumba at the Y.
Zumba.
Hello,
2009.
No, I'm like, can we do Zumba? And so am I good at it? No. And am I learning in therapy that that's not the point? Yes. So it's very just like funny and silly. I think I've done like 6 classes. So it's like been such a funny experience, like allowing myself, this is like a lot of exposure stuff for me. Like,
hell yeah.
Very far away from feeling like movement was something that I could be a part of. Pretty much like since I was a teenager. So like I'm just doing lots of exposures and healing type stuff that I've put off forever. So it's Zumba, but it's also Zumba. It's like something that I'm like feeling like I'm choosing and that I'm having fun. And I didn't think that movement could be joyful.
Aww.
Ever.
Yeah.
And like being here and like how we talk about movement, like that's really elicited that within me where I'm like, okay, like I'm completely allowed to go and do this at like a low stakes place. And it's been really fun and I'm enjoying it.
I love it. And that is wholesome as fuck.
I know. My inner teenager is like, okay, we're like doing the scary thing.
Yes.
It's
love it. Yay.
What about you?
So mine is a YouTuber.
Okay.
His name is Harmen Hoek.
Ooh.
And he's from the Netherlands. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but the last name is Hoek. Link will be in the show notes.
Sure.
He does these my jaw is dropping just thinking about these videos. So he goes on these like, let's say 7 to 20 day hikes by himself with his, like his pack, which it's funny, we clicked on like the little shop links. And of course, all of these things like $600 sleeping bag, $1,000 tent, because he has the best of the best gear that is super ultra lightweight.
Yeah.
Because of what he's doing. And then all of his camera gear is like an extra 10 pounds or whatever on top of that because he's like best in class cameras. And he will, some of it is drone footage from overhead. So you're getting like the large views of these like most beautiful places in the world.
Wow.
But then there's, you know, it'll just follow him walking and he places the camera. Then he goes back and he walks. And then he has to go back for the camera. So he does these solo. The cinematography, the editing, it is all just absolutely stunning. And then they're silent. So there's just this like light ambient music and then sometimes like light ambient, like the sounds of the actual walking through the space.
Oh, it's so ASMR.
But there's no talking. It is phenomenal. My mom and stepdad introduced me to his videos. And I'll just like turn them on while I'm sitting in the living room. Yeah. And it's so... I feel like I'm getting to visit these beautiful places without doing all the hard work or expense. And just the dedication to the quality of his craft is just stunning.
That's awesome.
So I highly recommend checking it out.
I'm going to go look and just, you know, sometimes at home on my walking pad.
Yeah.
This would be great. I'm like,
look at me walking through the Dolomites.
No,
we're
and
like,
I'm just like in my house.
Alexa, where are the Dolomites? Italy, it turns out.
Italy. Hey, we learn something new every day.
Welcome to The Lore, where we share anonymous listener-submitted stories about literally anything. The more cringe or jaw-dropping, the better. To submit your story for a future episode, find Deeps on the gram at ButForRealPod or at GaiaCenter.co/podcast.
Today I'm sharing my own story related to the episode topic, which is couples therapy.
Yes, it is.
And I just wanted to throw it in here because we're not going to get into this stuff when we're in our DSM conversation of the episode. But I wanted to share just how valuable, not even, I mean, yes, it was couples therapy, but it was sort of the combination of couples therapy enlightening me to like, oh, well, there's actually another way of viewing this. And then, oh, there's some books that I'm being introduced to, even as a clinician I had a fair amount of experience at that point, but not in couples work. And funny thing is you tend to want to avoid shit that you have not worked on, right? Yeah. So I learned a lot. And it's just... the message that I want to share is that you never know what's possible. Because I think our culture just gives us so many messages about like, oh, well, you know, here's what a relationship is supposed to feel like. And if it doesn't feel that way, it's probably broken.
And wrong. And
God, there are just so many unhelpful messages out there. Like we were on our trip to Scotland in 2019. And this was before we had done any of that work together. And I was just sort of silently suffering, not understanding like what is normal in long-term relationships and what you have to do to sort of like rekindle the passion and all of that. And so I'm reading one of Cheryl Strayed's books, Tiny Beautiful Things. And one of the essays is basically just like talking about her breakup with her first husband and how like he was so wonderful, but if something doesn't feel right, you can just leave. And I was literally, we're sitting in like a pub and I'm reading on my Kindle and I was sick to my stomach.
Shit.
Like I was just like.
Visceral.
Yes. And because I was like, oh my God, is it over? Like I'm getting these messages telling me like, this is what it should be like and this is not it. And so just walk away. And since then, I'm like, I think I had a paperback copy of that too at home, and I gave that shit away because I was like, get out of my life, Cheryl. You are not helping me, dear sugar.
Yeah.
So yeah, I want to caution people that there's a lot of messages out there that can make you feel pretty hopeless, and that things like in love, quote unquote, and attraction even are a lot more malleable than our culture will have us believe. So I just wanted to share that lore because there are some shitty norms, some misinformation out there, and we're going to be giving some truth later in the episode.
Absolutely.
But wanted to share that, and that, you know, my husband and I, we've been together It'll be 11 years married this year, 13 years together, and we're, I would say, stronger than ever.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then just to lighten it up a little bit, so as a total part 2 of the lore, listeners/viewers, I was just eating my little lunch earlier, right before we started recording, and it's just in a Tupperware. So Emerson's like, what's that? And I was like, Chipotle. And you told me what?
That the hot take is that I've only eaten Chipotle like twice in my entire life.
Ever.
Yeah, ever.
And I said, well, I have some Chipotle lore, honey. And clearly I still eat it. What that says about me, I don't know. Overly trusting? It was the year of our Lord, 2004.
Okay. Damn.
And I was...
Me, just a kid.
You, a small child. Me, my freshman year of college. And I was living with my friend Sarah, who I'd went to high school with. We'd been friends since middle school. She's wonderful. And we were sharing a dorm room. And also, backstory is, at this point, it was like June. We started in June, and this is like 2 or 3 weeks in to school. And so there was a guy I had a crush on, but we weren't like dating yet. We later would. But so I had just living my life, eating my meals, doing what we do.
Sure.
And then I'm hanging out with this guy, and I'm just like, I'm not feeling well. I think I need to go back to my dorm. Because, you're feeling the gurgles.
The bubble
and you're
guts.
just like, get me out of here.
Get me out.
And then it got real bad. I felt worse and worse. And so, and I think I even called my mom, because I'm like, just moved away from home. And she's like, just chug-a-lug some of that Mylanta. We got it for your medicine cabinet. And so my roommate was not there, but she comes back, finds me passed out in the bathroom in which I had shit myself. And then she, in her infinite wisdom, goes and gets one of the luggage rolling things, because we're on the 4th floor.
Sure.
And I can't walk, clearly, but it's not like I'm conscious at that point. So it's not like call an ambulance. I don't know, maybe. But she had her car. So she's like, I'm just going to put her on this luggage rolling thing, get her down to the 1st floor.
Are you fucking kidding? What in the sweet life of Zach and Cody is happening?
Then we get down to the 1st floor, and whoever's staffing the desk down there is like, she can't be on there. And my friend Sarah's like, I'm taking her to the fucking hospital. It's the middle of a Sunday afternoon or something. And so she wheels me on out to her car, takes me to the hospital. And I pass out and I wake up in, I don't know, the middle of the night. My mom is there. She drove 2 hours to get there. So why we put it together that it was Chipotle was Sarah and I had gone together. She was a vegetarian. That was my first sign. I later gave up meat. I had eaten the chicken, let's say.
Okay.
And it came to be discovered that the Chipotle that's on the drag, which is the area right outside UT Austin campus, got closed down by the food department for several days because there were so many cases. So yeah, I was in the hospital for overnight, I guess, and it was not good. And then I think it was maybe a couple years before I had it again, and then I was like, fuck it. But of course, now when I eat it, I enjoy the sofritas, and hopefully that's a little safer. But
sure,
yeah, I think they're a little notorious for it.
I just have this vision of you, and I'm like, yeah, you're just literally on the fucking floor.
Me trying not to shit myself in front of this little guy I have a crush on.
You're like, I have to go. You're running. You're like, listen, you can't trust a fart.
You can't.
People say after 30 you can't trust a fart. I would argue that maybe after 24 you can't trust a fart.
And you can feel the difference. You can feel when something sus is going down.
That's just sorry.
So anyway, that's my lore.
Okay.
And now it's time for the DSM. In our DSM, all varieties of dysfunction, spiraling, and meltdowns are welcome. In this segment, we break down complicated concepts and common misconceptions about mental health, well-being, and tell you what we really think.
Our grand old topic for this week is what couples therapy really is, because there's quite a few misconceptions, myth-busting, hot takes, all of it included. So let's just kind of set the scene and talk about the catalysts for couples therapy, because they're different for everyone. So just the kind of overview, right? Like a relationship, a romantic relationship and all, but mostly our romantic ones for this episode, are our emotional ecosystems. When something's off, literally it can affect the entire system of the relationship. So most couples present to therapy with a combination and or main presentation of these normal patterns of behavior. Communication breakdowns. So we could have like attachments-oriented stuff in there with like avoidance, with like pursual or withdrawal kind of dynamics, conflict avoidance, or explosions, people just blowing up. Mismatched needs for intimacy, sex, space, security, disagreements with how to raise children, anything like that. Lingering resentment or emotional injuries that haven't been healed, so any infidelity or just wounds that have progressed across the relationship. Feeling like roommates, enemies, or ships passing in the night, those long-term relationship type vibes. Who are we anymore? And then attachment wounds from childhood and or previous relationships is one that I like to suss out a lot. If you were in a toxic relationship, those dynamics could be flaring up for you in this new relationship that proves to be healthy, and that can be a really hard transition. Couples therapy is not about getting to who is right. I feel like that's a big thing all the time. Well, we're here because I feel like I'm right and they're wrong.
Yeah.
It's not about being right. It's about what's happening between. It's about what's happening within the system of the relationship. So that's kind of some of the things most often, I think, is what we see people for.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could add to the list, but we'll get into some more examples. And really, what couples therapy can help you do, first, slowing down your reactions, right? Learning to pause and respond rather than react. I mean, if you can learn that skill and learn it well, you are going to be infinitely further along in your own sort of emotional and interpersonal maturity than most people.
Yes.
And it's not about doing it perfectly. Like we all get triggered, activated, whatever. So it's not about making that never happen again, but being able to ideally catch yourself before you say shit that you're going to regret, right? So slowing down those responses, learning about what attunement really means, right? And I should have put a fancy definition in here, but when I think of attunement, it's just like that being with someone and being able to just have a sense of what's going on with them, to be really present with someone and paying attention, right? And it does take a level of emotional intelligence and
to
mindfulness.
co-regulate like that.
Yeah, to just even recognize what's going on, especially because what is it, 60-something% of communication is nonverbal, right?
Yes.
So certainly if we're reading into text messages or whatever that and sometimes that tone you're picking up might actually be legit, other times it might not be at all, but you're missing a lot of that key information that the nonverbals give us. So paying attention to those nonverbals, like really watching, being with your partner when you're communicating and getting underneath the surface, right? We know that the perpetual fight about the dishes ain't really about the dishes. Ever, right? Now, that's a way to like get a couple riled up is like, so tell me about how your partner loads the dishes and what's wrong about it.
I've had that conversation, and this is distinctly a quick turn, and this is exactly how you load the dishwasher wrong and why I hate it. And I'm like,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And why I can tell you that is a fundamental character flaw of yours.
Well, yes.
But yeah, getting underneath those sort of seemingly, and a lot of couples know this, like they come in going, we're fighting about all this stupid shit.
Yeah.
And in the moment, we can't stop ourselves, but we're still doing it. And so helping them recognize that, both the conflict management pieces, but also those sort of interactional patterns and dynamics that can fuel that stuff. So learning tools to better repair when we do have ruptures, because they will happen.
Yep.
It's not about avoiding conflict. It's about understanding your conflict styles and gaining some new skills, and be willing and open to that repair. That's another thing too, is sometimes we just dig our heels in, and even if our partner is making an attempt to repair, we're just like, I don't want to.
Yep.
And, you know, it can at times, couples therapy also be helping people with a therapeutic separation. Yep. It can be helping them to sort of consciously uncouple, as Catherine Woodward Thomas made famous, and Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin were sort of like all about the conscious uncoupling. But it's legit. She's a therapist. There's a great book on conscious uncoupling. Being able to do that in a way that honors the relationship, honors each individual, and honors, you know, maybe any children that are present in that family system, and certainly co-parenting, whether it's in service of hopefully healing the family unit, or at times just being able to move forward and co-parent well separately.
Yeah, and having all of those, you know, even those last parts with like conscious uncoupling, I feel like those are the parts of couples therapy that still feel so new and that people don't know. Like, people have a very kind of one-way view of couples therapy. You go in, maybe you do a certain amount of sessions. It's a very specific way. So kind of wanting to like broaden a little bit of perspective on like different schools of thought. You can go, and when you're looking for a couples therapist, everyone kind of has their niche and pulls from different schools, and maybe primarily operates from one or pulls from multiple. So the Gottman method, that's the one that I personally use the most, and, you know, learning about that from Valerie and supervision. So the Gottmans, John and Julie, I feel like they're like the mom and dad.
The OG mom and
OG
dad.
mom and dad of like long-term marriage satisfaction research, like the evidence-based practice, the house down boots, babe. They have everything. Books, podcasts, blog.
The Love Lab,
everything. So the Gottman method is very like focused on, you know, really harnessing those conflict management skills. It's not about preventing fights. It's being prepared and equal for your next one that is inevitably going to come up. Learning about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. That's kind of like a cultural thing. I feel like people are learning about it. The 4 horsemen is basically the icky shit that we do in conflict that kind of sucks and pulls us away from one another. And helps kind of bring people together through lasting rituals of connection. So especially if you're someone presenting to couples therapy in that kind of roommate phase, I feel like Gottman method is awesome for that, because it's really helping reconnect you, talk about the rituals, how your love fits into your life, and how you make space for your love to come back around. So that's a big one. EFT, emotionally focused therapy. So you can have EFT individually and you can have it with couples. So this also is established as like a short-term treatment option. Anywhere between 8 to 20 sessions is typically what they pull, or what I pulled from their website. This is based on attachment science. So it's like really getting to the roots of your emotional experiences under all of that conflict, and really is encouraging couples to come and approach each other from like a deep place of vulnerability. I believe EFT, their kind of phrasing is "hold me tight." I think
that's one of the
say.
names of Sue Johnson's books.
Yes. So it's really about that vulnerability piece and being able to express the deep needs that you have in the relationship. So it's a very like deep one for some folks.
One thing I want to add there that is, because I've never really been an EFT person. Not to say I won't ever be. It's just not something I immediately feel super drawn to. But, you know, there are gems, golden nuggets, if you will, in any model. And one of the Sue Johnson things that has always stuck with me is like her sort of way of finding a shorthand for attunement is this: are you there for me? A-R-E, are you available, responsive, and engaged?
Okay.
Yeah.
I like that. Ooh. And then another kind of, I feel like that's similar to EFT, but kind of a little bit, like similar vibe, is Imago. Oh, shit. I feel like people say Imago.
Do they?
No.
I don't know.
You know more than me, so that's correct. Imago, which is the Latin term for image, literally.
Yeah.
So this is all about how your early attachments affect your literal, in quotations, unconscious image of familiar love. So your partnership may be mirroring your early childhood attachment wounds, and it basically focuses on utilizing the relationship and a lot of structured dialogue as a vehicle of safety, of healing between the partnership, and then probably also individually. So you're not spending a ton of time just like rehashing a shit ton of your childhood trauma. There's relevant information through that structured dialoguing, and then it's more about the container of the relationship to bring forth healing, closeness, connection, attachment. So lots of attachment-based stuff.
Yeah. And with each one of these models, a lot of them sort of have like, they'll have books that are, and resources and trainings that are geared toward clinicians, but then they'll also have resources that are, geared toward just anyone. So like with the Gottmans, the sort of classic 7 principles for making marriage work. With EFT, Hold Me Tight. With Imago, Getting the Love You Want.
Yes.
So a lot of these are like classics that have been around for a long time, and there have been, additional books and things, but if you're looking for kind of the classics to just get a sense of the philosophy of each one of these, those are good places to start. I'm going to share about some that are a little lesser known. So the Doherty approach, I am a Bill Doherty fangirl. He created something called discernment counseling, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But he is just this, again, an OG marriage and family therapist. He's a professor. He's just done a lot of work in this over the years, and family therapy as well. But he's such like a pragmatic, practical, like no nonsense kind of guy. And I really appreciate how the approach that he's built is basically like, you need a larger framework to understand when you should pull this thing from this model or this thing from this other model. Like if you're just dedicated to your one model and your one framework, that may not necessarily be what that couple needs based on what they're struggling with. Yes. So that's one of the things that I really like about him. And so he did create sort of his own thing called the Doherty approach that is not as well known, but again, it's plays well with other approaches, and I just think integrates a lot of things that make really good sense that not every model talks about. So for instance, this he pulls out of a group dynamic model called Family Phiro model and adapted that to couples, which is the smallest group. Right? And then, of course, the clinician becomes a part of that group. So looking at these sort of core patterns around conflict and control and intimacy and how when we need to be addressing which thing. So really fascinating. If you're a clinician, definitely recommend you check out the Doherty approach. As far as clients, it's not one that you can necessarily, a lot of people are not out there saying that they do it. But you can Google and see if there's anyone. If you're in Nashville, of course, come on over to the Gaia Center. And then another one is called Relational Life Therapy, RLT. So this is Terrence Real. He's been also around for a really long time. He first kind of came on the scene bigger in the 90s when he wrote, and I'm going to forget what it's called, but something like, I don't want to talk about it, about male depression. First book on male depression.
Oh, wow.
And so that was really kind of what he was known for. But then he developed this relational life therapy model out of what he saw as some of the gaps of like, hey, wait a minute. So all of these schools of couples therapy sort of tell us that we're not supposed to take sides.
Yeah.
And he's like, we do need to join and do this compassionately. But many times, and especially with certain individuals, someone needs to be challenged.
Sure.
Like not every fight is 50-50. And sometimes it's maybe 70-30 or even 99-1. So there are times, especially with, maybe more grandiose sort of control-oriented issues.
Yeah.
Which he's very much, coming from a feminist approach and looking at how the history of patriarchal relationship is still very influential today. So being able as the clinician to really, compassionately, but confront, carefront, right? And then also to work on the trauma. This is one of the things, I mean, the Gottmans talk about how you can do this as well, but more traditionally in a lot of models, it's viewed that like, well, yeah, we do the couples work here, but if you need to do trauma work, you go and do that with an individual therapist, right? And Terry is like, no, it's really powerful to do that work here, sitting next to your partner, right? Because this is shit that is having an impact on the relationship. Sure. And how might it affect, their understanding, their compassion and empathy toward what's going on, to be a witness to that. So
that's so interesting,
right? It's really cool. So I'm digging into that now, and I'm getting super excited because I do feel like, a direct approach is right up my alley.
Sure.
And then the last one that I'll mention here is called PACT, and that is Stan Tatkin's model, psychobiological approach to couples therapy. Now, this is newer to me, so I haven't done any of the official training yet, but I've been reading Wired for Love. I historically I just get annoyed at a lot of the pop psychology stuff. And so when pop psychology has been blowing up all over social media of everyone obsessing over their attachment style, I'm just like, I want nothing to do with it. Because to me, it feels very like fixed mindset of like, I'm just an anxious attached girly. And so that's just how I act this way. So I've kind of avoided going down any of the models that like focus heavily on attachment. Yeah. But then I had this couple where it was just like beating me over the head, like we've got to be talking about this. And so I finally was reading Wired for Love, and I was like, oh. So he actually came out in the second edition of the book and was like, he uses this metaphor of anchor, secure, island, avoidant, and wave, anxious. And so he came out and was like, oh my gosh, guys, please do not interpret this in this like rigid sort of labeling kind of way. That's just often not helpful. But how he contextualized it and just some of the other things about his approach. I mean, the psychobiological, obviously similar to the Gottmans, focus on nervous system arousal and nervous system regulation, like all of that is really huge. But it's also just very experiential, very in the moment. So I'm really enjoying learning about it, but I'm still kind of a newbie. So check out Wired for Love is a great one that's written for, and then I think what is his newer one is called In Each Other's Care. And it's just beautiful. Like it talks about what is needed to create this secure, functioning relationship. He uses the term couple bubble, which I kind of hate, but I get the point. It's where it's like, we got to be with each other. What's kind of not us against the world in a bad way of like, fuck everyone else.
No, but it's being a team.
It's being a true team.
Yes. And
looking at how, no, it's not about that. Like if you're a wave, if you're, tend toward the anxious side, that you have to become an anchor. But the reality is, he says, the more that you work towards secure functioning and creating that in the relationship, the longer you do that, you both will become more anchors. And it's really cool. So
interesting.
Yeah, lots of fun approaches.
Love this. Yeah, and find the one that's like, I feel like with these schools of thought, like I can envision someone on the backside of this being like, oh my God, now which one should I pick? Yeah. And like this part isn't for you to feel like you necessarily have a perfect approach. Again, having an integrative approach is probably what most good couple therapists do. They take from multiple schools of thought to tailor the treatment, right, as best as they can. So don't get too caught up as a layman,
one model, right?
Like, I have to do this.
I must do Gottman and Gottman only.
Like, don't have to sip that tea. You don't. It's okay. So, further kind of considerations for couples. This part is really important. We need to talk about when couples therapy is helpful and when it is not helpful. Again, which is something that a lot of people don't know about. They think, oh, this is what we should be doing right now. Not true, depending on the circumstances. So when it is helpful, when it is proactive, premarital, if you're like looking at getting married, premarital could be like a great opportunity. We do that here. I've done that work. It's so fun. And or just generally wanting to get ahead of any kind of looming or major issues. A lot of people think, oh, if I'm with someone, but we're not necessarily married yet or even doing premarital, should I like go? Why the fuck not? Go and have like another like, third party option. And flush out some of that stuff. I feel like that's a really healthy approach if you care about this relationship and seek for it to go forward. Why not?
Yeah, there's just a lot of topics that don't always necessarily come up in day-to-day, not just day-to-day, but even like when you're kind of looking at some of the big picture things, like there's certain things, of course, you're talking about, like, do we want kids, whatever.
Yes.
But it'll kind of give you an opportunity to talk through some of the other big things that maybe just don't tend to come up around money or in-laws or that kind of thing, health issues.
Yes, definitely the like when the relationship is kind of veering into a place of trouble, persistent negative sentiment override. So that is something that my brain clips from the Gottmans. So, not being able to hold any kind of congruent or positive light for your partner, really having a hard time in that conflict management, perpetual issues that are coming around. We can't agree on money. We can't agree about the kids. We can't agree about this. We're not fighting well. We blow up at one another. We're really unhealthy. This person blows up and then they leave and now I'm crying. And it's like, okay. Feeling disconnected, we're just passing one another. We only do taxes and laundry together. We don't have fun anymore. I can't remember the last time I had fun with this person. And then how that all can integrate and or blow up sexual issues as well, which highly recommend for people. I feel like the couples avenue, a good couples therapist, again, like you should be bringing up sex and intimacy. Sorry. Like you don't have to be a sex therapist, but like, I think of Martha Kauppi, like bridging that and bringing it up. It's important to bringing it up and then making appropriate referrals.
Yes.
I think is really valuable. And it's a valuable place for a couples therapist to kind of be in that middle ground with people because a lot of couples come in and sex is kind of the presenting issue. And I get in it with them and I'm like, well, sex isn't happening because like all these other shit is on fire.
Yep.
You're not like getting towards intimacy into the bedroom when all of this is on fire in front of you all the time.
Yep. And, this is one of those things where historically a lot of the couples therapy world has sort of looked at it like if you, fix all those relationship problems and then the sex should fix itself.
Magically fix itself.
Right?
Yep.
And it just doesn't happen that way a lot of the time. Like every now and then, maybe, but often it doesn't. And so that's where if you feel like you've done a lot of good work around the relationship and that therapist does not seem very equipped to help you deep dive into the sexual challenges, make sure that you're working with a sex therapist. And so ideally, and we could have put this under frameworks, but even though it's not officially a framework, it's sort of like an approach is integrated sex and couples therapy, right? So if sex is one of the things that you're hoping to work on, but maybe there's others too, just find a great sex therapist who's also a couples therapist.
Yep.
Right? Cool.
Twofer.
So when is couples therapy not maybe the approach to take? One is if there is ongoing domestic violence, especially the Gottmans talk about separating situational versus characterological. So we don't want people to hear like, I shoved my partner one time and we got a little at each other. So we can't do couples therapy. Like that's not it, right? We're talking about like the situations where there is a serious power and control imbalance. There is a lack of safety, and that is just not appropriate, right? What's appropriate is to get that person out of that situation and towards safety. Sure. Not saying that there could never be repair in that relationship, but they would have to be out of that pattern. There would have to be a lot of individual work done by that abusive person before there could be any couples therapy that could be successful. And again, that doesn't mean if it's more of a situational thing, we both kind of have pushed each other, but I don't feel scared of my partner doesn't feel scared of me. That's more of a let's talk about building some self-regulation skills and some better conflict management strategies. When there is a serious unaddressed mental health or addiction issue, you're just not going to get very far. Yeah. So this is not one of those like, you have to love yourself fully before anyone else can love you. Like, no. In fact, a lot of times we heal relational wounds in relationship. Yep. So you can do really great couples work while you're still doing your own personal work. But if we're talking this is a pretty severe mental health issue or an active addiction issue, you just need to, that's foundational, that you got to address that before you can do good work here. You kind of alluded to this earlier, like if you're coming into couples therapy, just both of you just hoping, well, the therapist is going to help you see that I'm right about this.
And that you're wrong.
Yeah, and that you're wrong. It's probably not going to go great. You're probably just going to feel like we didn't get what we wanted out of this.
Yes.
And so, it's about learning how to fight better. And that often entails like recognizing that we're not going to resolve a lot of this. The Gottmans say 69% of conflict is perpetual. And I'll have clients be like, well, so then what do I do with it? If I can't solve it, what do we do? Well, if you want to be together, you just learn how to talk about it better.
Yes.
And and you learn how to make it okay that you don't see eye to eye on it. And yeah, there are some situations where working toward compromise is possible.
Sure.
But it's ultimately recognizing that one of you sort of convincing the other one that you're right is not necessarily the answer. So if that's what you're looking for from therapy, you're probably going to be disappointed. If the therapist is not very good at their job, I was talking with one of our favorite couples therapists, and I won't out her here in case she doesn't want to be known publicly for saying this, but she said that so much of our field is so deeply mediocre. I just really appreciated that, Yeah. And so I say that not to make people feel hopeless about finding a great couples therapist, but to encourage you to be picky and discerning.
Sure.
Right? That if you're feeling like it's not helping, like, yeah, you might want to sift through, okay, is part of why it's not helping because I'm not willing to take a look at my side of the street, or we're not implementing the skills, or we're not whatever. But sometimes if you've really given it a go and you've been working for a while on it and it doesn't feel like things are shifting and you're integrating the strategies that you're talking about, then it might just be that this is not the person for you, or this person may not have a lot of great couples skills.
And that's fine.
Because there are a lot of people out there seeing couples who don't have much training or experience, or and that's just, it's not great, right? Yeah. So know that it's not necessarily that couples therapy won't work for you. It might just mean that you got to kiss some frogs.
Sure.
And, try to do more consult calls so you don't have to have a lot of...
Yeah, shop around.
Yeah, shop around. Shop around. And then the last point of when couples therapy is not necessarily the move, is when there is what we call a mixed agenda. So like one person's really wanting to preserve the relationship and the other person is like a foot out the door.
Yeah.
And they're also, so that's ambivalence, right? One person has ambivalence, but there also needs to be ambivalence around engaging in couples therapy, because sometimes people are like, yeah, I'm kind of 1 foot out the door, but like the part of me that's 1 foot in, like is willing to go to couples therapy and try. So go, give it a try.
Sure.
Because sometimes you can, if the work works, you can get that other foot back in. But if you're not sure, because a lot of times, somebody might be, we call them the leaning out partner, might be at a place where they're like, listen, I don't know that I want to work on it.
Yeah.
I tried. I just don't know that I have it in me to try to work on this. That's when discernment counseling can be really helpful, because it's not quote unquote therapy. No. So if you're like, okay, we're in this place, we're not ready to like push send on the divorce. Like I'm not ready to make that appointment, but I am really struggling to know if I want to continue to be in this marriage, then discernment counseling is a time-contained process between 1 and 5 sessions. It is something that you're going to want somebody who has done the training in it. So I did the training last year, and it's the thing that Bill Doherty, one of his things, and it's just phenomenal. Like, love the training, highly recommend it to clinicians if you enjoy working with couples who are at that delicate spot on the brink. But it's just really powerful. And it's not about like necessarily making it go one way or the other, which we'll talk about in a minute, but it's really honoring, like, this is a large decision. Let's be able to look back on how you made this decision and feel good about how you made it, regardless of what the outcome is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. And just like our like last little notes, like from people that see couples. One of the things that we flesh out here and that we talk about and is included within our couples intake is the no secrets policy. So again, a lot of those concerns with people coming in, most of what people voiced to me within the first session of, I'm nervous about what this process is going to look like as a trio, about picking sides. And I always reiterate, and we always reiterate, that the client is the relationship. Like,
the relationship is the client?
And vice either way.
I was confused.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's important to look at the individual aspects of what's coming up for you as an individual and how that's reflected in partnership, in the conflict, in the attachment, in the whatever. And also it's the prioritization of the relationship. So it's not about, leaning in. Do couples therapists have internal bias? Yes.
Yeah.
So does your regular schmegular individual person. Like, we're constantly in supervision and in consultation, fleshing out and trying to work on those areas because it is natural that it can occur. And also, like, that's within the role of the therapist to be monitoring in that time and to seek consultation and flesh that out if they need to. Being like very overtly picking sides and isolating someone. And I'm sure it happens. I've heard that it's happened with people before, with couples. It not only is causing like a therapeutic relationship rupture, it's just like further rupturing the relationship in front of you. So it's never a good idea. And again, being able to discern, okay, am I just having a hard time, like with my shit being on blast here, and or is this person like not creating a safe environment? So really taking that part seriously when you're doing couples work.
Like, it's the whole taking sides thing is challenging. It's nuanced.
Yes.
Because it doesn't mean that the therapist needs to be completely neutral on every
single thing,
conflict or topic that comes up. That's going to be not helpful. That's going to be somebody not calling a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a time and place for that. But generally, the therapist should be joining with both people so that both people feel that there is space for them, that they matter, that they're not being judged. But that doesn't mean that the therapist is just going to co-sign all of your shitty behavior.
Yeah. Right?
So it's a nuance. And we're taught some things that are not necessarily super helpful in school related to that. So the therapist agenda, like you said, it's not ultimately that we want to, Kimberly came in saying she wants this to happen in the relationship, so by God, we're going to make that happen for Kimberly. Like, it's going to ultimately be what's in service of both of the individuals, but also the relationship itself as a third thing. And it's not our job to decide, right, which direction, like if there is ambivalence, it's not our job to help you figure out, should we stay together? Now, we can help you sift through what's coming up in the relationship and how you've both contributed to that to help you figure out what needs to be changed and are those things changeable, right? That's what we can help you discern. But just be mindful, like we wanted to include in here, that even if your therapist is not overtly telling you what to do, and this goes for individual therapy especially when this person is only getting your perspective, that they might say things that make it clear what direction that they are leaning in, or what they think is quote unquote healthy. And the therapist, like it or not, as much as we'd love to be like, oh, we're just shoulder to shoulder with you. Like, we try to be, but we try to, make you the driver in your own process. But also we have to acknowledge we are in a position of authority. And so your words, therapists, have power. And even implied messages can influence people. So just be mindful of that if you're in therapy, that it's not your therapist's job to tell you what they think you should do. Now, they can express concern, but it's not their job to decide what's right and best for you. Also, I put on here, beware of cynical couples therapists. God, I was on some Reddit threads the other day, and somebody was just saying, like, my best friend who's a couples therapist was saying, I just think half the couples who sit in front of me just like shouldn't even be in my office, and they just don't have a shot. Why are y'all even together?
Okay.
Like, oh my God.
So you put couples therapist on the door inside the practice, girl?
Yeah, I
Woof.
know. It's like, again, like we're not married, no pun intended. We're not married to like, this must work out at any
must
cost.
stay together.
Yeah,
Well,
right. Like there are times where maybe that's not what's right for both individuals, and that has to be honored, even if one of them ends up being really devastated by that.
Yeah.
But just to kind of get cynical about it, because sometimes you see that, like it's going to affect how you work with people. So if you're picking up that cynicism from your couples therapist, please find a new one.
Yeah.
I mentioned a little bit about individual therapy and how, so it can both support and undermine couples therapy.
Yes.
So it's really important to, again, be mindful of the power that your therapist holds. So like, let's say you're in couples therapy and you're genuinely really trying to work it out, but then you show up into your individual therapist and you're just venting about a really frustrating thing that happened with your partner. Now, that person is only hearing your perspective,
Sure.
right? So we're taught, again, that like our job is not necessarily, and we'll, selectively we can do this, but our job is not necessarily to play devil's advocate, right? So we're taught, to validate and empathize, and that's important. But sometimes that can sort of unintentionally co-sign somebody's perspective on, oh my God, yeah, this person was just telling me, wow, that sounds like your partner was being so selfish. And, and then how is that influencing how you're then relating to them later that day? So just know that you can communicate to your individual therapist and you can say things like, hey, sometimes I want to vent to you about my partner, but I also, and this is not about like protecting abusers. This is not about like, oh, I need you to see that even though my partner hits me, they're a good person.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about that. It's just about saying like, yeah, sometimes I might need a vent, but I do want to be mindful of like that there's more to that story than what I'm sharing in this room, right? And that's really the therapist's job, but they're not always going to do it well. So just bringing that for your awareness. And if you're open to it, sign a release of information for them to communicate, right? It's so helpful to be on the same page because there will be things that come up in your individual therapy that therapist might say, oh my gosh, I feel like this would be so helpful for the couples therapist to know. And sure, you can go back and forth and communicate those things too. But sometimes with our clinician hat on, we can say it in a way that really like gets to the core of it. And it's just really helpful for that person to hear directly from us. So if you're open to it, sign that release so that your individual therapist can be talking with your couples therapist. And then, like I mentioned before, individual therapy, that trauma therapy doesn't always have to happen separately in individual. There might be times where it's very appropriate and even very helpful for it to happen in the couples work.
Cool, yeah. So, but for real, relationships can be messy because humans are messy.
So messy.
Like, we just have a lot of stuff going on. Couples therapy is a great opportunity to get really clear about emotional fluency, safety, mutual care, and an opportunity to like continue learning about yourself as an individual in the process. It can be a very valuable process and is one that can and should be tailored to the needs of what's happening between you and a partner and or partners. And so being open to the experience and learning.
Yeah, just give it a try.
Give it a shot.
Yep. Amazing.
And now, our musical segment. Now that's what I call Okay, where Emerson and I each share a song with each other each week as representatives of our respective generations. We tell you a little bit about the song or artist, and then we press pause, we share the song with each other, and then we come back for our live reactions. And we're capturing it all on a Spotify playlist linked in the show notes for you.
What you got for us this week?
And so for your emphasis on usually, this is probably not considered my generation at all. This song is 1,000 Trees by the Stereophonics. Have you ever heard of them? Never. They are a Welsh rock, indie rock. Baby, it's from the hometown.
Yeah.
So, hometown pride. They were formed in 1992. I was born in 91. Mic drop. So they are from a coal mining village, honey, in the south of Wales.
Can you pronounce that word?
Like, no. I meant to ask my mom before I left today and didn't.
I'm going to try.
Aberdare, you know.
Quamaman.
Sure.
Probably not, though.
I know they said something on Wikipedia or it was near Carmarthen.
Okay.
Which is where I'm familiar with.
Maybe that's how it's pronounced.
Perhaps. So this is from their 1997 album Word Gets Around. Banger.
Okay.
They've released 12 studio albums over the years with 8 UK number ones. Just such a vibe, and always makes me think of my parents. And like when they were falling in love, and like the kind of like the soundtrack of like the first parts of their relationship. And so my parents are also very, I would say, like different musically. Like they probably would fight a lot over music, but they have both brought such like love of music out of me. So when something of this comes on rotation and the both of them are kind of singing in their own vibe, it's like, it's just cute. It's like, okay, music connects always, you know? So
I love it.
I'm excited for you to like have some Welsh tunes.
Bring it on. I loved it. Just so charming.
Kind of like a vibe, right?
Yeah. And listeners, go give it a listen. Like just a lot, like the words were just very fast, but not in a bad way.
Welsh people talk fast, kind of.
Yeah.
Like, if you're ever going to be around me and my mom, we're like, it's it can be a lot.
I love it. Very cool.
What about you?
Okay, my song, and it is 8 minutes and 12 seconds, so I will not make you listen to the entire thing. But this one is just, and I know I played one like this before, where it's like you turn it on and you just like, you're just like one with the song and you're just moving and you can't stop. It's just so epic, this song. So it's called In Keeping Secrets of Silent Earth 3 by Coheed and Cambria. And that is also the title track, the name of the album. It is their sophomore album, came out in 2003. And I'll tell you that I've never become like a super fan of theirs just because I don't listen to enough music. We did see them live a couple years ago and it was phenomenal. But they're the kind of band that has super fans.
Sure.
And they've released a ton of music. They tour all the time. And the lead singer, who's also the main lyricist and everything, Claudio Sanchez, he has this graphic novel series. And so this album and several others they tell that story. So it's like a concept album in that sense of like, it's sort of this, futuristic sci-fi story that I couldn't tell you a lot about, but I can tell you that I love this fucking song.
Sure.
So let's listen to it. Thoughts other than watching me have a conniption fit?
And so Valerie just literally, she couldn't even wait to press the space bar for her to get up and just be like, and honestly, like, yeah, like that's the gist. Like,
it's banging.
I just like the gist.
That's the gist.
That's the gist. That's the gist. There was a teeth missing on the end there, everyone. Yeah, every time you like bring me one of these like wackadoodle millennial ass songs, like I just like kind of am transported back to the time. Was it Bonner that I went last year? Yes. And I was just like at this like middle kind of afternoon set, and it was just like all millennial type songs.
Do you remember what it was?
And I'm just like, no, like they were just like covering so many different songs.
Yeah.
So I'm just like standing there, and like all the millennials are just like screaming,
losing
and
their
healing,
minds.
and I'm there like, yeah. And I was just like, okay. And then they played Teenage Dirtbag, and I was like, hey, I know this one, to my like millennial friends that I'm with. I'm like, hey, and they're like, just healing. So I'm like, I want that to be there. I think they would love that.
And just picture me angsting out at 17 to this song.
Yes. Okay.
Oh, man.
And now for our last segment of the show, welcome to Fire Dumpster Phoenix. It is rough out there, y'all, and we need all the hope we can get. It's time to go dumpster diving for some positive news and rise from the leftover Happy Meal ashes together.
So Valerie, what is your good news this week?
Well, this is a story I read a few weeks back in the Monitor, and I had forgotten about it. And so I went on to ChatGPT yesterday, and I literally typed, can you please help me find some good news? I'm struggling. Things are very dark right now. And then I remembered this, and I really liked this story. So this is a story in the Monitor about waste, food waste specifically, and how Massachusetts has become a leader in reducing food waste. It is the only state to make significant investments in this. They actually enacted a food waste ban in 2014. So we're talking like restaurants, grocery stores, where they are just truckloads of food that is just going bad, right? So it basically created a demand for them to figure out, well, then what are we going to do with it, right? So California, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Vermont have also enacted food waste bans. So here's the crazy thing. So they take this food waste, they put it on the trucks, they take it to these, and you know, I don't love that dairy farms exist as a vegan, I will say that, but they're going to continue to exist, and this is a cool purpose that they can serve. So they take it to the dairy farm, they process it into a goo, basically, and then they take that goo and they mix it with cow manure. And then the microorganisms in the cow manure release a biogas that is a mix of methane and carbon dioxide. They then trap that gas into these large steel vats on the farm, and they refine it into a renewable natural gas that can be used to heat homes and power buildings.
Not the fart gas.
I know. So like the guy who runs the plant said, basically, we harvest bug farts.
Bug farts.
So yeah, the gases that these little microorganism buggy bugs in the cow poo are releasing, and they can... each of these 5 digesters that this plant runs produces enough energy to heat 1,600 to 3,500 homes per year.
Science is awesome.
Amazing.
What you could do with a fart.
We started with farts. We're ending with farts.
It's a farty episode.
What you got?
Okay, so... And I just thought this was darling. This little 90-year-old lady, Barbie Keel from Sussex in the UK, continues to serve her nonprofit organization and has no plans to retire. She said so. She spoke about her mission of rescuing animals for over 20 years by herself. And now, because she's like old, she like has volunteers, like a little pit crew. She has a 12-acre sanctuary that she like legit fully just like ran by herself and now has help from volunteers. She's currently taking care of over 600 animals.
That's insane.
160 cats, 16 pigs, 8 dogs, 6 horses, 100 chickens, and 80 rabbits. Wow. Her sanctuary is free to the public, and she even buys bulk food for animals with her pension money and then sells it at a discounted rate so that people can afford to feed their animals.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't she just darling?
I love her.
I'm like, Barbie? Of course her name is Barbie.
An icon.
She's so Barbie.
Oh. Wow.
Love her.
I'm gonna send that to my best friend. She's gonna lose her mind. She's gonna immediately be like, I'm retiring and I am following in this woman's footsteps.
Barbie Jr.
Oh my God. That's all we got for you guys today.
Be sure to tune in next time.
Do it. Bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of But For Real, produced by Valerie Martin and Emerson Ryder and edited by Sean Conklin.
But For Real is a Gaia Center production. The Gaia Center offers individual, couples, and group therapy for clients across Tennessee and in person in our Nashville office, as well as coaching for clients worldwide. For show notes or to learn more about our work, visit GaiaCenter.co or find us on Instagram at the Gaia Center and at But For Real Pod.
But For Real is intended for education and entertainment and is not a substitute for mental health treatment.
Also, since we host this podcast primarily as humans rather than clinicians, we are not shy here about sharing our opinions on everything from snacks and movies to politicians and social issues.
Thanks so much for listening to this episode.
See you next time, bestie.